Afternoon everybody, and welcome back for another video. Well, I've been toying with a few ideas as to what project to do next, and I've sort of come up with something inspired by this piece of equipment down here. And I got this thing off eBay. It's actually a modulator unit. I picked it up for about 20 quid, and I always like these sort of self-contained modules because you can build transmitters up with them, and a lot of the hard work's being done for you. Now this modulator unit came out of an ARC52 transmitter, sometimes known as a PTR175, and that was an aircraft transmitter or transceiver used in a number of British aircraft during the Cold War, notably the Canberra, Jet Provost I think used it, and I believe also the Vulcan, so it was quite a standard piece of kit. And the unit's quite bulky actually. The original transmitter, you generally had the sort of main control unit in the cockpit, and then the rest of the transmitter was in a big black box in another part of the plane. Anyway, this is the modulator unit, and again that transmitter was built up of various modules and things like that, you know, like the oscillator, the PA, etc, etc. So this modulator unit has a pair of 2E26s in it, push-pull, little modulation transformer there, and it says on the transformer that it will do about something like 25 watts of audio, I guess. But anyway, so I'm toying with the idea of making up an AM-CW transmitter, because I also wanted to use this module, which is the VFO, a Collins VFO, which we featured in a few videos back. And I've just been sort of sizing everything up on the chassis. This is the power transformer, which is actually in the garage, but this is the base plate for it, so I'm just sort of been fitting and deciding whereabouts it should go on this aluminium chassis. Going to make things quite compact with this, but I figured that the modulator might go there, something like that, and probably have a front panel up the front here, similar to the 813 transmitter I think. And I'm going to have probably an 807 I think for the PA. The power transformer will give me about 450 volts or up to 500, and this modulator apparently runs, I've managed to get some data off it, so it runs at about 460 odd volts, something like that. So if we sort of base our PA on that sort of voltage, it should all work out. So if we're running about 460 volts with an 807 for instance, or you could use a 6146, could use a GU50, we'll probably get about maybe 20 watts out of carrier, something like that. So I figured that would probably work quite well. And I'm going to have a driver valve, a 6BY7 I think for the driver, and the other valve I'm going to put here is probably a cathode follower from the VFO, just to sort of make things a little bit better in terms of isolation from the rest of the stages. What else? I think that's going to be more or less it really. So I'll do AM-CW. I think I'm going to do it single band because it's just easier, so I'll probably make it for 80 meters because I tend to use 80 meters a lot, especially on AM. So I think it'll work. It'll be interesting to see how that modulator sounds actually. So anyway, we've got a bit of work to do, and we'll meet you all up again after we've done all the metal bashing and put it all together. Well, I've been pretty busy actually. Put this transmitter together, as you can see. In fact, I've I've been on the air with it already, actually, on CW. I'm very pleased at how this thing's worked out, actually. That VFO, the Collins VFO that I'm using, is absolutely rock stable, and compared to some of the other transmitters I've built in the past, which have been drifting all over the place, this thing's been an absolute delight to use, and it's worked out really well. We'll have a quick look at it in a minute, but I've managed to get a couple of contacts, a couple in Scotland, one in Czechoslovakia and Italy. And I only finished this off this afternoon, so it's worked out pretty well. Anyway, let's have a quick closer look at this rig, and I'll show you a bit more about it. So here we are, guys. This is what I call my modular transmitter. It's got modules, so that's why it's called a modular transmitter, but you've got to call it something, haven't we? And it's quite nice, actually, because it's got a bit of modern tech, and it's also valves, which is what we like here at the WTF. So that's the front panel. I haven't labelled it as yet, but it's got the standard knobs and everything. So you've got the top there, that's our plate tuning, and then here we got our load, and then two switches down there. This one is basically the transmit and receive, and then here we've got AM and CW. So looking at the top here, we got this thing turned on, so we have to be quite careful. And as I mentioned on the opening slot, we've got an 807 there, which is producing about 20 watts of RF, and that's the modulator unit, which I haven't tested fully on AM yet. Well, I've tested it, but I haven't had a QSO on it. But from what I can tell from the bench, it seems to sound okay, and it's producing the right levels of modulation. But it's not sort of like the Class E and the Optimod standard. It's nowhere near that. But for communication purposes and for what it is, it sounds all right. And we've got the big HT transformer at the back there, and then there's that lovely Collins VFO. So the setup for this is actually all quite standard, and I know there's people who always put in the comments they want a circuit diagram. Well, I can put a circuit diagram up, which I will go through, which is it's a very standard circuit, really. It's just a driver, the 12BY7, and then you've got the 807, which is in the PA, and then we've got a 6J5 triode, which is a cathode follower, and we've got that VR150. There are a couple of things I need to show you on the underside, actually, which have also helped to make this transmitter quite stable, because I've been after stability. The last few transmitters that I've built have all been very good, but certainly when it comes to the ones with VFOs, the VFO has always been the weak link. Having to correct for drift all the time is always a bit of a pain in the neck. But so this thing, I think I've managed to solve all that. So anyway, let's have a quick look at the underside, just to show you a few interesting features. Right, here's the underside of this transmitter, and as mentioned, most of it's actually fairly standard. We've got the big power supply there, the big transformer for the HT, and the toroid there actually is for the 12 volts to work the relays, and also that supplies 12 volts for a Chinese power supply. Yes, the ubiquitous Chinese power supply or inverter, and that is basically supplying 150 volts or thereabouts for the VFO, and it goes the voltage is actually a little bit higher than 150. It's about sort of 180 odd, 190, and then we've got our voltage regulator VR150, which, to be honest with you, is probably not that necessary if you're using one of these, because the input of this is also coming from a 12 volt voltage regulator, so the voltage into it's pretty regulated, so the output's also going to be pretty good. But anyway, we've got a VR150 because I think they look quite nice. They do glow lovely sort of purpley colour. Now one of the interesting things that I've done here on this transmitter, which I haven't done before, and this board here is actually the keying relay, which is a solid state relay, which I haven't used those before, and I thought I'd give it a try, and it actually works really well. Normally when I key the cathodes of the driver and the PA, I normally use a sort of a normal relay, which works, but it's noisy and it's probably not quite as good for the keying envelope as probably this thing. So these are actually a little package, a DIP6 package, and it's essentially similar to an opto isolator. So it has an LED on one side and a couple of FETs on the other, and when the current or voltage goes through the LEDs, I think there must be some sort of photosensitive thing on the gates of the two FETs, and they conduct, and so the you can key the cathodes of the driver and the PA, which is what I've done. That big yellow capacitor there is actually a key click filter, which also again works quite nicely. So that solid state relay there is you know, a little bit of modern tech. Seems to work pretty well. So the rest of it, you've got the tune circuit there for the driver, for the 12BY7, and then moving back we've got the 807 base, which again the circuit for this is very standard, and I will draw it out for those who are interested. The modulator you can't see obviously because it's on the RF deck, but that's a little D connector which it plugs into, and then you just screw it in. So you know, it really saves a lot of time and hassle. So if we just come over towards the front of the rig, and again the rest of this is really the power supply components. We've got the large board there with all the capacitors is for the HT. We've got two windings from the HT. One's about 500 volts for the PA, and then there's one which is about 300 or thereabouts, which supplies all the other voltages, the other valves, for instance the driver, and also the preamp or the speech amplifier for the modulator. And the little board down there is basically our LT supply, so 12 volts for the relays and for the Chinese power supply. And that's it, more or less. Just the other fancy things we've got it's upside down, there's a digital frequency counter there, and there's a meter there for measuring the plate current. Actually it's the cathode current because we're measuring it across that 10 ohm resistor there. So that's the transmitter. What I'll do is I'll quickly draw out the schematic, because I know people always want the schematic of these some of these projects, but you know, most of this stuff you can find on the internet. It's all quite you know, there's nothing radical about it. I think what I might do in the future is actually maybe do a couple of videos for beginners who perhaps might want to learn or get into building homebrew stuff with valves, because you know, they're quite easy to use, but I think maybe the high voltages perhaps puts people off, but you know, that's not always a reason to you know, not to like them or to get into them and to start using tubes. They're good fun, and as you can see by this transmitter, you know, you can build something up really nice. Anyway, let's just take a look at the circuit so we can just go through it quickly for those that want it. For those that want it, this is the circuit diagram. And as I said, most of all this can be obtained on the internet because it really is nothing special. So just to go through it, so the VFO comes in here, and this is the cathode follower, a 6J5 triode. I mean, you can use you don't have to use a 6J5, you can use whatever you want. I mean, I use this because that's what I had. And then following that, we've got the driver, which is a 12BY7. And you could theoretically put the VFO straight into that, but I chose to put the cathode follower before it, just to try and isolate it a bit more so that you don't get pulling and things like that, which is always a bit of a nuisance. And then here we've got a tune circuit, obviously in the driver, and then that goes to the, just move the camera slightly, the grid of the PA, which is the 807. And again, this circuit is standard. You've got a Pi network in the output, RF choke or plate choke, 2.5 millihenry. The grid circuit, okay, so we're operating this as a Class C with a standard biasing resistors, 30k and a 1k there as well. I've got a grid stopper there, 50 ohm, just to try and get a bit of stability, and that's more or less what it is. You don't have to necessarily use an 807. You could try a 6146 would work, something like 6L6, similar sort of thing. Also the little miniature 807 as well, which I can't remember the name, the 5B something something something, which we used in the field radio. You could use something like that. Again, it would work equally as well. Just to draw, oops, sorry about that. Just to draw your attention to the details regarding that solid state relay, for those who are not familiar with them. So these things come in a package. If you look on RS or Farnell, you can find them. They're quite easy. They're pretty cheap as well. I think they're about £5 or thereabouts. And this is the basic package, and in fact the one I've got's actually got two of these. It's got a FET and it's got two diodes, so you can actually use each FET, you know, to run each channel. So what I've done is I've got one FET controlling the driver and the other FET controlling the PA. So all you do is you just rig up a 12 volt supply. You need to put the necessary resistor for the LED, and you can key it here. So every time you key it, the LED goes off, and then I think there must be some sort of photo voltaic thing there on the gate of that FET, so that when the light shines on it, it produces a voltage there and it conducts. So that's all it is. And these things seem to be really nifty. Actually, they're a lot quieter, and they seem to key the transmitter very nicely. Actually, so something to think about when you want to, if you want to, you know, key a simple valve rig. So that's the basic circuit diagram. Obviously, I've left out details regarding the power supply, because a lot of that depends on what you've got available. You know, obviously, I've tailored this to the transformer that I've got, but I've given you the sort of various voltages. 220 for the anode of the 12BY7, and again you could use 6AG7 there, which would also be fine. Similar sort of voltage on the anode for the 6J5. The 807, again, depends how much power you want to run. An 807 will take almost, well, if you push it hard, it can take up to 1000 volts. I know people who do that, but generally it's sort of 700, around about 700, 800 volts for an 807 at full chat. 500 volts is sort of average, and you can get about 20 watts out of it with that, which is, for this type of rig, is more or less adequate. So that's the circuit. What are we going to try and do with this? I want to try and test it out on AM, so we'll probably have to wait till one of the nets and see if we get some reports. It'll be interesting to see how it sounds. I've sort of rigged it up to a scope, and it seems to be okay. I've had a couple of gremlins with it, which I think I've seen sorted. So quite keen to try it on AM, and we'll give it a go. Right, morning folks. As you can see, we've got the transmitter here, and I pretty well finished it off. We've got a nice metal case for it, and I've set it up, and we're hopefully going to try and get some recordings of what it sounds like. We did have an initial problem with hum. It seems to modulate pretty well, and the audio's pretty okay. The only problem is that some of the reports that I was getting when I went on with this rig a bit earlier was that people reporting there was a bit of background hum. It wasn't, you know, excessive, but I tried to sort of trying to find out where it was coming from, and I think the problem is that the modulator unit may be a bit too close to the mains transformer, and I think it's probably picking up a magnetic field because it's a 50 hertz hum. But nonetheless, it does work, and it does give an acceptable level of modulation and comms quality audio. Anyway, it's the morning net this morning, so what we'll do is we'll try and get on that and try and give you a bit of a demo of the rig on AM.
So let's leave those comments alone. And yes, I thought you'd pick up on the South Downs there. Well, that's a good place in the south of the country. The South Downs region, there's some wonderful landscapes there. Devil's Dyke and all the ones along there are absolutely magnificent places. It's only spoilt by the rubbish that they had call a city. Oh, I'm being too rude about the place. I'm sure there are similar places. Let's say it's not my cup of tea. Round to you, Justin. GW0 M1 PVC.
GW0FZY returning. Yep. Okay, Paul. And on the new homebrew rig, so my signal might be down a bit. I hope the hum isn't too obtrusive. I think I turned the microphone gain down a bit. I did actually add a few little decoupling capacitors here and there, and try to improve the heater wiring to the modulator unit. So maybe it's a bit better. I don't know. I did laugh at Ian's description of the hills around Tyne Brighton, or wherever it is. I used to spend a lot of time down there because my granny used to live in Worthing, and we used to go there quite frequently for half term. We used to go down on the coach down to Worthing, and she used to take us to Brighton, you know, quite a few times. You know, we used to go to the pier and all that. So I do actually have fond memories of Brighton. I never really sort of went into the main city, really only apart from the, you know, the coast, the shoreline area, you know, where the piers are and all that. And I've got sort of reasonable memories of the place. I don't know what it's like these days. It's changed a bit. Since I was in the 70s, I think. But anyway. What else? I'm just trying to think if I need to give a few reports. Martin, good signal for you, Martin, about 10 over 9. And I think that was all. The new joiners I need to give a report to. All okay on that Evolution saw there, Andy? Yeah, that's the same one as I've got. And I bought mine a while ago, and I must admit they do really help for cutting you know, angles and things like that. Those Evolution things are very good for cutting metal, and it will be surprised what it will cut. Actually, it just glides through it like butter. But anyway, right. Who do I hand it to next? I think Ray. I think Ray's still there. So over to the station with no name. G3 VTD from GW0FZY.
Yeah, okay, yeah, from G3 VTD. I'll put sign, but I'll just listen to you for the transcript on the other transmitter, just make sure I've got it. Yeah, so just come back on that, Justin, if I may. Yeah, the improvement is dramatic, actually. If I listen carefully, I can hear the hum in the background, but that's on the western one. I see how you've gone down considerably in signal strength on the direct path. But compared to yesterday, it's a vast improvement, and I'm sorry that nobody will particularly comment on it now, Justin. So hope that makes you
Okay folks, I hope you enjoyed that demo of this nice little rig, and hopefully catch you again soon. Stay safe, keep well, and click the button to subscribe.